Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be invited here amongst you all, such young students with bright faces over here on this dull morning, I would say rather. It's not so sunny out there. So thank you so much for inviting me and for showing interest in this topic. That is most important. So today we are going to discuss challenges in water and sanitation sector for women in urban slums. We are focusing more on that because water and sanitation is a very vast topic and with lot of aspects to it. But let's talk of the poorer section of society, and that to the women in the informal settlements, in the low income settlements, and what their problems are, what their challenges are, what they face. So we are restricting our conversation and our talk today more to the urban slums, to be a little more specific. So just to give you an idea, let's start off with the worldwide figures. 2.6 billion people in the world, or 40% of the global population, does not have access to basic sanitation facilities. Now that's a huge number when we're talking of a population of 6 billion people in the world. 2.6 billion people are without all over the world. It's not only a problem in India, but all over the world. Of course, we see that South Asia contains more people without safe sanitation than any other region in the world. And open defecation is more prevalent in South Asia. And of South Asia, India is a vast country. It's a huge country with a population of 1.2 billion, where 597 million people defecate in the open. This is the largest number of people in the world. And that is why you're hearing so much discussion of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan by Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji. When we're talking of becoming a superpower, when talking of developing, of going strides ahead, being the fastest growing economy in the world, we also have, shamefully for us Indians, the largest number of people who defecate in the open. Why? Because they have no access to any toilets, and also because of the cultural practice of going out in the open areas. Because 70% of urban's population is in rural areas, in villages, and there are no toilets there at all. So when we are talking of towns, it's basically 30% of that population. And that is why before the independence of the country, Mahatma Gandhi had said, sanitation is more important than political independence. At that time, he visualized it at that time, political independence is necessary, but sanitation is more important than that. And the relevance of which is even more important today, because as the population is growing, the number of people defecating out is increasing, the diseases are increasing, and it is becoming more and more a problem. That is why it's more relevant today. So we all know that there is rapid urbanization all over the world. It's not only limited to India. But urbanization in developing countries is a distinguishing phenomena of this century, with added pressure on city infrastructure. As times are passing, more and more people are migrating from rural to urban for jobs, for better living, for earning more money, and that is why they don't have a place to stay. They just come and migrate, they just settle down anywhere in the towns, and if they have no money, the resort is landing up in slums. So with urbanization, the slums are also growing. In India, we see that out of a total population of 1,210.2 million people, as on March 1st, 2011, about 377.1 million people live in urban areas. So that's nearly a quarter living in urban areas. And over the last decade, 91 million people is the net addition of people in these areas. And so we see in 10 years, 91 million people have come into the cities from the rural areas. Even the cities have increased. There is an increase of 2,774 cities or towns in India, from 5,161 towns. Now the towns have increased by 2,774 to 7,935 cities today, resulting in a growth rate of 31.8% of the population in urban areas. I've taken these figures just to give you a rough estimate, a rough idea of how cities are growing, how people are migrating to towns. Population is increasing, but population is increasing more in urban areas. Hence, the pressure on infrastructure is much more, especially in the rural, especially in the low income settlements and the urban slums. Because of rapid urbanization, we see that as per the 2011 census, the number of metropolitan cities has also increased from 35 to 53. That is the big metropolitan cities. We see an increase in the population chart below, shows that Greater Mumbai had a population of 16.37 million in 2001, and in one decade, now in 2011, it had gone up to 18.41 million from 16.37 million. Delhi also, population has grown from 12.79 million to 16.31 million. In Kolkata, these are the 5 largest towns which I have taken, largest cities in India. In Kolkata, from 13.22 million to 14.11 million. In Chennai, which is a much smaller metropolitan, from 6.42 million to 8.7 million. And Bangalore, from 5.69 million to 8.5 million. So, we are already in 2016. This is the data for 10 years, 5 years have already gone since this data was compiled. So, the population of course would be much higher than what this chart is showing. Now, we see that the towns with a population of over 1 lakh have also risen from 393 towns to 465 towns. So, the number of towns are increasing, the number of metropolitan cities, the big cities are also increasing, and the population in the cities is also growing and growing very rapidly. So, it is good in a way that a lot of people are getting employment, but if infrastructure does not keep pace with this increasing population, then there can be a lot of terrible things happening to the cities and to the people living there. Now, we come little more to slums in these cities. The report of the Committee on Slum Statistics or Census 2010 has reported that the percentage of slum population to the total urban population in India is 26.31. That means 26.31% of the population living in urban areas is living in slums. This is the general average. The projected urban slum population in 2016, this year, is 102.73 million, and next year by 2017 as 104.67 million. So, we see an increase of nearly 2 million people every year in the slums between this year and next year, and maybe even more than that in the following years. As per an NSSO report, the estimated number of slums in Delhi from 2008 to 2009 is 3,133, including non-notified. We will talk of this later. The slums are divided into 2 parts, the slums and the JJ clusters, which are non-notified. So, percentage of slum population to urban population of Delhi is slightly lower than the national average and stands at 17.97%, whereas the total population, as we see above, is 26.31. But the projected slum population for 2016 and 2017 of Delhi is 36,81,745 and 37,93,313 respectively. This is just to give you an idea, a rough idea of how the cities are expanding, how more and more cities are coming up, how more and more towns are coming up, and how more and more people are coming in the slums. So, as per census 2011, the ratio of women in Delhi slums is 780 as per 1000 men. If there are 1000 men in a Delhi slum, the general average of women in that slum is 780 per 1000 men. So, they do not constitute 50%, but nearly 40% of the population of slums. And if you add children to that, it comes to much more than 50%. Now, getting a general idea of the cities, urbanization and the slums, let's discuss the challenges for safe sanitary environment in urban slums which are faced by women. We will discuss women later, we are just discussing in general first. The basic amenities of safe drinking water and access to toilet facilities remains a formidable challenge in urban slums, even though it is recognized as a basic human right. Sanitation was not recognized as a basic human right earlier, it was only water. All these decades in the last century, water was given importance and sanitation was considered a poor cousin. Even all the funds, allocations, everything was towards water, but we used to say water and sanitation. But after 2003, after the Earth 2 report, then sanitation also came center stage, and over the last decade now sanitation has also been recognized as a basic human right with water. Everybody has a basic human right to sanitation all over the world. So, we define sanitation to get a clear idea what it means. It is not just toilets, it broadly defined, it includes besides toilets the installation of infrastructure along with service delivery and also safe management and disposal of human excreta. So, okay, installation of infrastructure is the construction of toilets, but that is not enough. Sanitation includes a service delivery, how it is going to be maintained, how it is going to be operated, and the safe management of disposal of human excreta. That is very much a part of sanitation. What happens to all that human waste and where does it go and what do we do with it? So, sanitation covers that as well. Now, one of the first challenges faced is low infrastructure. There are a lot of people living in the slums. Are there enough toilets for them? Is there enough water for them? That is a common problem in all cities and towns now with growing times now, but much more so in slums. So, as per Draft National Urban Sanitation Policy 2017, 17% of the urban population in India has no access to any sanitary facility, which is of course much better compared to rural areas, but still 17% of urban population has no sanitary facilities, and 50 to 80% of the wastewater is disposed of without any treatment in a city. So, what happens? Women and young girls are the worst sufferers if there are no toilet facilities, forcing them to resort to open defecation in nearby forest areas, lonely spots or behind bushes, and they are becoming increasingly hard to find in cities and towns. In villages still there are some spots where one can go out, and that is the practice also, but in towns we see with all this townships coming up and buildings coming up everywhere, there is absolutely no place to go out except maybe somewhere along the ridge or somewhere in a little in the parks, they are going out in the parks or in open fields or a little jungle area or a forest area nearby where that slums tend to come up. Now, this is especially a bigger problem for migrant inhabitants who are coming from outside the city, and they come and live in high density urban slum settlements. They have no land tenure rights, they have no right on the land because they are illegal squatters, and hence no toilets are made for them and they have no access to toilets. The government says they have no right to stay here, this is illegal, they have just encroached upon the land. They cannot even, they are not allowed to stay here, the land does not belong to them. How can we make any toilets for them? How can we give them water? How can we give them electricity? So, the problem is even worse over there, and these are basically the JJ clusters. So, low infrastructure in all these areas is a big problem. Now, we also see in slums that open drains with stagnant dirty water, a perfect breeding ground for mosquito breeding, is a common sight in most slums. They are just open drains, water is flowing, excreta is flowing, all the wastewater is flowing, everything is flowing through that, because the children also sitting along the drains, do not forget them. Now, it is well known that dengue virus breeds only in fresh water that stagnates, and this gets accentuated in the summer months. We just for 5 months faced this dengue virus in Delhi, and a lot of children dying. Children are the worst sufferers, and hospitals, we have seen how they are overflowing with dengue patients. But why is the root cause of the problem of the mosquito that breeds in the stagnant water in slums not dealt with? So, women and children in these low income settlements are at risk of rapidly increasing vulnerability to diseases caused by poor sanitation, which leads to waterborne diseases and spread of bacterial, viral and parasitic infections, which is one of the key impediments to improving the quality of life and productivity of people living in low income urban settlements. So, if there is diseases, they are vulnerable, they are waterborne diseases because of dirty water and the spread of bacteria, of viral, of parasitic infections, then obviously the quality of life deteriorates. People are sick, they are paying much more for medical bills, and the productivity also goes down, as well as of course education of children, because they cannot attend school if they are sick. So, another major challenge which is faced in urban slums is low service usage. That means even if the facilities are there are not enough people using those services. Because of low priority given to sanitation, first of all, toilet facilities are not constructed. Even if they are constructed, by they I mean the public toilets, because there is no place to make individual toilets connect to each house in a slum, they are locked at night or inconvenient to use for women and girls, as they are unpleasant or unhygienic because of poor operation and maintenance. So, just construction of a toilet is not enough, the maintenance and operation is very, very important. Otherwise, the role it has to play of helping people with toilet facilities, it becomes just the opposite. It becomes a breeding ground for wastewater overflowing. If you know what septic tanks are you anybody aware of septic tanks? So, septic tanks are connected to public toilets generally in most cities in India, because there is no sewerage, and when the rainy season or when there are too many people using those toilet facilities, the septic tanks fill up and the dirty wastewater overflows, and when you know that sullage water overflows, what happens? It is a breeding ground for all sorts of illness. So, at times when there is no place in a toilet, the municipal body puts up mobile toilets, mobile toilet vans outside the slums on the pavements due to space constraint inside. So, the women, girls, they do have a place to go, but normally a mobile toilet van is a row of toilets on either side. One side is for men, one side is for women, and it has a big sludge tank underneath where all the excreta goes in and the water and everything collects in the sludge tank. Now, if there is a sewerage line, then it can be connected to that sewer line outside the slum, and the effluent or the wastewater, it goes into the sewer. But if there is not anything, then what happens? When the sludge tank fills up, it has to be pulled out by a tractor and taken somewhere else and dumped somewhere else, further polluting the environment. And that is not done very often, because the municipality has to send a tractor, it has to be pulled out, then the person who does it, they want extra money for doing this work. So, it has not been a very feasible idea, but sometimes they just put up over there that yes, there is a toilet when there is absolutely nothing else. So, at times when women and young girls go there or to the outskirts to relieve themselves, especially after dark, they become a victim of molestation and even rape. Because if they are going to a mobile toilet or they are going to the outskirts of the slum, because there is no toilet inside the slum, there is no space inside the slum, they can become a victim of molestation and rape, which is again very, very dangerous. Forget having a toilet to go to. That is why we say there can be no gender equality when women face daily harassment. It is not a one day affair, it is a daily harassment, abuse and violence when looking for somewhere to defecate. Now, what can be a bigger challenge for a girl or women living in a slum? There is no toilet. The toilet, she has to go out in the open, sit somewhere along somewhere, find some bush, find some trees somewhere where she may be visible to others, or she can be faced with violence and abuse. And this is not just theoretical. We have been hearing of this. We read it in the papers. It keeps happening all over the country some way or the other. So, we have discussed all the challenges, but what is the way forward? We find that weak institutional arrangements are there. Why is this happening? This is happening, lack of toilets is happening, illegal settlements are happening because of weak institutional arrangements. The state government, state agencies and municipalities have to play a very important role in microfinance. You see, we need the funds to construct the toilets also, and the funds to operate and maintain them also. So, it is primarily the responsibility of the corporations and municipalities, but they have to have the funding, they have to talk at the micro level to solve this problem and meet this challenge. Because sewerage is unaffordable in a vast country like India, it is too expensive. Besides, there is space constraint in slums. So, public toilet is the only remedy which is generally funded by local bodies. Public toilets are generally funded by local bodies because even corporations or big institutions, they do not want to fund a toilet which is in a slum. Okay, if it is in a prominent intersection or a market in Delhi, maybe they will advertise for it or they will pay for it, but nobody wants to pay for the slums. It is primarily the job of the municipality or the corporation. That is why major reforms in functioning of urban local bodies and their capacity building is required. Major reforms are required because they are unable to handle the situation and unable to go forward in solving this problem. There are not enough people. If there are people, they are not so serious about it. So, their capacity building is very important. They have to be taught how to do it and what is the correct method of doing it and how they can finance these toilets and construct these toilets as well as operate and maintain them for the benefit of women and girls especially. I think we have discussed sanitation quite a bit. Let us come to a bit to the water sector as well. Issues faced by women in the water sector. Acute potable water shortage is another huge challenge faced by women in urban slums. We all know that the time and energy required to fetch or store water impacts a woman's ability to work and to do other household chores, because she is spending half her time just collecting water or in the rural areas going and fetching water even up to 5 kilometers. The women are burdened with the task of storing water in any container from intermittent supply, which comes for short duration and that too at odd hours of the day. There is no fixed time. A slum may have water supply only for 2 hours. You will be surprised, I have heard people saying we get water supply only once a week for 2 hours. So, that 2 hours once a week they have to be at home to collect the water, otherwise they will get no water for the next 1 week. So, they have to keep all sorts of containers which they buy generally from the kabadiwalas, the 5 liters, 10 liters, buckets, whatever they can lay their hands on, stack them in the house and fill them up for the water supply for the house, for cooking, utensils, bathing, washing, everything has to be done with that water. So, which is a huge burden for the women and girls. The men generally go out to work during the day. So, hand pumps were there earlier in slums and they were used, but the water table has gone down drastically in most cities and towns. We all know that. Even for boring there is no water, forget hand pumps. So, the poor have to pay much more when getting water from water tankers, especially in summer months. There is a huge shortage of water in summer months. They all need water. So, only way out is to buy water from water tankers. And they will end up paying much more for water than the rich do, because the rich still get some water in their piped water supply. Now, besides getting the water, the main other problem is the purification method and how that water is consumed without being purified. So, drinking contaminated water with mud particles and pathogens leads to diseases such as diarrhea, dysentery, cholera, jaundice, etc., which exacts a heavy toll on children and results in high family medical expenses and child mortality. We hear this very often, that a child has got jaundice, child has got cholera. Why? Because the water the child has had is contaminated water. It may be at home because the water is not purified at all in slums, or even if they are drinking water outside by street vendors or outside. Now we have educated children and women and elders are very conscious of the fact you would rather go and buy a mineral water bottle and don't drink water outside otherwise, because you might fall sick, might fall prey. But those in slums have no option, they can't afford mineral water, and they are not aware also of what this water can do to their health and the health of their children. So, gastroenteritis and cholera plague children, increasing stunted growth and malnutrition. The health of the family and the productivity levels are thus adversely impacted. And they are not even aware that this, if a child is having stomachache, it is because of the impure water that the child is having. So, here awareness is very necessary, and what we can do and how we can make them aware. So, these are the issues in the water sector. Now, for both for water and sanitation, we have seen the challenges, but we have to think of the way forward. What are the technologies that one can adopt and what can we do for it? So, let us talk of sanitation first, since we discussed that first. Technologies for disposal of human waste are primarily of two types. For disposal of human waste, safe disposal. One is on-site disposal and the other is off-site disposal. On-site disposal means that wherever the toilet is, the waste, human waste can be disposed of there itself. I don't know whether you are aware of pit latrines, pour flush, twin pit latrines, where you have two pits, the human excreta goes into one pit, it collects over there including the wastewater, and when that pit fills up it is covered, and then the other pit fills up. And by the time the second pit fills up in 2 years or 3 years, the first pit can be emptied out because it has already decomposed and it is without any pathogens. And the other one is septic tanks, which I discussed earlier. Public toilets are connected to septic tanks. It is just a tank, a concrete tank where everything collects, but it is only a collection because it does not decompose. Human waste does not decompose in a septic tank, it is just collecting over there. So, it has to be further emptied out, put into trucks or tankers and taken out and thrown somewhere else. Whereas in pour flush, twin pit toilets, it decomposes there on site, but slums do not have that space for construction of twin pit toilets. And pit latrines is when you just dig a pit and squat on top of it, put something on top and a seat on top and squat on it, and when it fills up, you just cover it up and dig another pit. It is more applicable in rural areas. And off-site technology is when the human waste is taken out from there and taken somewhere else for disposal, like the sewerage system, which is very common and has been the prevailing practice all over the world. Started in UK, of course, in 2 centuries back. So, sewer, we all know, we just go to the toilet, flush, and that is it, and forget about what is happening to that waste and where it is going. But it is all going into the sewer. But now with cities expanding, India does not have the infrastructure to construct so much of sewerage lines. It is too expensive, requiring a lot of water, which further pollutes various water resources. Because where does all the sewerage of the city go? It goes to the rivers, lakes, etc., which are also the source of drinking water. I am talking of Delhi because we are all staying here. The Yamuna in Delhi is a classic example where city sewerage is disposed of without proper treatment because of insufficient STPs or inefficient STPs as well. Of course, it is not only the Yamuna, it is the Ganga, it is all rivers in fact now, especially of northern India, where the entire sewerage is just disposed of, and those rivers are getting totally polluted, they are becoming nalas, the water is decreasing day by day, it is more sludge than water, but at the same time the drinking water source is these rivers only. Where does the water come to the city? From here. So, if the water from the toilets carried by the sewerage line can be treated before it is let into these rivers, it will not pollute those rivers, and the environment will be safe. So, these are the appropriate technologies which have to be adopted to a much better extent. So, technology options and designs need to be approached carefully with proper references to local conditions, human and financial resources, and also the needs, preferences, cultural habits of service users, especially of women and adolescent girls. All this has to be taken into account when you are talking of technology options, because they all may vary from area to area. The soil conditions may be different, the cultural habits may be different, the local conditions may be different, and financial resources and needs may be different. So, when we are talking of technology options and the designs which are going to be adopted, all this should be considered first. Now, proper implementation of construction of toilets needs to be done with the involvement of women in the community, for whom priorities may be different. Normally what happens, it is the men who are doing everything. The women are totally overshadowed. Oh, they can just cook at home and sit at home, and they don't have to be there. It is the men who are doing all the planning, all the designing, all the infrastructure, all the architectural work, everything. Now of course things are changing gradually, but still. So, construction, especially when we are talking of slums, we are talking of anywhere, even in a house today, if we make a kitchen, it is a women who has a say. We say, no, we are cooking in the kitchen, we want to decide how the designing of the kitchen, isn't it? We don't want the men to do it. So, similarly with toilets also, their priorities may be different. Privacy is more important for women and girls, and close proximity to the toilet are more important for them, as well as separate entrance to public toilets. A woman and a child, they don't want a toilet which is say 1 kilometer away from the slum, somewhere at one corner. If it's a huge slum area, if you just have one public toilet, it doesn't serve the purpose of the rest of the population in the other part of the slum. So, it has to be in close proximity to the house, and there should be privacy. Privacy in the sense, okay, you made a public toilet, but there is no latch to the door, or there is no door, somebody has pulled out the door. So, what is the point of having a public toilet where there is no door or where there is no latch to the door to close the door? So, privacy is very important. For men, it does not make so much of a difference. And even for public toilets, it has been observed that women normally like to have a separate entrance. So, if you make a public toilet with separate entrance for men and separate entrance for women, because normally a public toilet is divided into two, for the men's side and the women's side. So, even the entrance should be different. They may not like to enter rubbing shoulders with a man when going to a toilet, because there is always a queue in the morning. There may not be sufficient toilets over there. There is a long line there, so they don't want to rub shoulders with men. So, these are the things which are very important when we are talking of the designing of the toilets and the technology options. So, these technology options also need to be a part of the planning process, addressing a range of factors affecting service delivery and use. There is no point thinking of these options after the construction has been done, or after the service everything has already been decided, then it is difficult to change. It is better to think of all this beforehand in the planning process itself. And also impact on the nearby environment should also be kept in mind. That is very important. We cannot have a toilet and then we just make a hole in the wall and let all the excreta just flow outside, out of the toilet at the back, in the backyard. Or even individual house, you cannot have all this thing. So, environment has to be kept in mind. Where is that human excreta going? Where is that waste going? The wastewater going? Of course, I am not going too much into detail of the various types of toilets, because there are many all over the world, and even in India. There are dry toilets, there are wet toilets. Generally in India, because everybody uses water, so wet toilets are there, but now different technologies are coming up of dry toilets where human waste is separated from urine. Urine is used for reuse for agriculture and this thing, but those are different designs. But whatever the design may be, the impact on the environment must be kept in mind. That is very important. So, in many villages now we see that women are demanding a decent toilet in the house of the prospective husband before agreeing to marry him, and even going to the extent of returning to their parents' house if there is no toilet in the new house. Now, this was unimaginable 5 years back or 10 years back, but now it is happening. They become aware. Earlier they just had to get married and just go out in the fields, but now they are saying no. And places like Madhya Pradesh, in villages in Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh, in the backward areas, even in the tribal areas, they are demanding, first they want to know if there is a toilet in the husband's house, in the would-be husband's house or not. If that is there, then only we get married to him, otherwise no. And I mean, I am not mentioning the name, but there is one lady in a village in Madhya Pradesh, she got married, she went there, she came back to her mother's place, and then she said, unless the husband constructs a toilet, I will not go back. And then he was under so much pressure that he had to construct a toilet, get it constructed, and then only she went back. So this is the difference women can make. It's not no longer that we are helpless and we can't do anything. So we were just talking of wastewater and sludge. Here again, through implementation of appropriate technologies, wealth can be generated from waste, like biogas generation from human excreta, which can be used for lighting, cooking or body warming. So from public toilets, the entire human excreta and wastewater, if it is connected to a biogas digester, the entire waste can be converted to biogas, which has about 66% methane, and methane is a combustible gas. So this biogas can be connected to houses where they can provide gas for cooking. It can provide lighting, it can be converted for generation of electricity, and it can also be used for body warming. If you can just sit around it, get the gas, it is like a fire and you can sit around it in winters. And so these are some solutions which can be done. Everything does not have to go to the sewer line. Thus waste can be recycled and reused. Now with new technology, before new technologies, I would also like to talk of new technology, which is bio-toilets. I don't know whether you have heard of bio-toilets, which is the latest done by DRDO of Government of India. It's a defense research organization. Now they have come up with toilets with a tank underneath, in which you put inoculum. Inoculum is bacteria, and that bacteria eats the food of that bacteria is the human waste. So it eats up the human waste or the fecal matter, and the water gets biodegraded and can be used for agriculture. So it's just a simple toilet with a little tank underneath with this reed. The tank can be underground. There are various other technologies which have come up like this which can be implemented anywhere, even in slums and even in any institutional areas, houses, factories, anywhere it can be put up. It does not take up much space also. So bio toilets is the latest which is being put up, where again you do not need it, it is an alternative to the septic tank, to the pit latrines and to the sewer system. So now with further new technologies, biofuel can also be derived from sewage and landfills, which can be used to run buses and other vehicles. Maybe you read this in just 2 or 3 days back, the newspaper. In fact, I have got a cutting also of the paper over here. So these are the various ways where this waste can be recycled to wealth and reused. But this is yet to be implemented in India, but they are already talking of it, of how garbage, solid waste management can also recycle the garbage and waste, municipal waste and the sewage, and get biofuel from it. So there are various technologies. If you go into the design, I think we will need a separate seminar for that, for discussion of that. But before all that, let us come back to the basics. Community awareness for information dissemination. We all know that community awareness, information, advice and hygiene promotion are required for effective communication, for change in mindset and behavior of the people. If you construct a toilet and people do not use it, what is the point? So they have to be made aware of it. What are the advantages of having a public toilet, of having a toilet? So strategies need to be much more than just promotion propaganda and messages, and should be adopted before construction of public toilets in the slums or even toilets in individual houses in the rural areas. If you construct a toilet, you have to tell them the importance of why the toilet should be used. So people have to be made aware of the disadvantages of open defecation and advantages of using a toilet, even if it is a shared one. Then only the construction should start. Normally what happens, as you must be reading even now in the papers, so many lakhs of toilets, so many millions of toilets have been made in the last 1 year. Okay, fine, but what about the awareness program? Are they going to use it? In fact, only I think in day before yesterday's paper I read that they have rejected in UP, they have rejected the toilet which has been constructed, and they are using it either for keeping grains in it, or they are letting a member of their family, the children, sleep in that room, or it is being put to other use. So, on paper, yes, the toilet has been constructed, but is it being used as a toilet or not? That is more important. And that can happen only when you do the community awareness first, before the construction of the toilet. Even if shared toilets, you know what shared toilets are? Community toilets. It's slightly different from a public toilet. It may not be a public toilet. There may be a line of 2-3 toilets. If the people of a similar community living in a slum, they don't mind using it and sharing it together, taking ownership of it and maintaining it together. So, those are shared toilets. So, women need to be made aware of simple water purifying methods such as adding chlorine tablets to contaminated water, adding water filter to water storage containers, and not dipping their hands in the drinking water container. This is very important. Women and children, they just put their glass in, take out a glass of water and give it. No, hands has got a lot of bacteria and germs in it. So, water has to be always covered, drinking water should always be covered, hands should not be dipped into it, and if chlorine tablets are added to the water, it purifies the water at the household level, and even by adding a little water filter. You must have seen these earthen ghadas, as you call it, or surahis, which have a little tap underneath, a small tap at the bottom, now we see. So, if you can add a water filter over there, you are putting the water there, the earthen part of the container is purifying the water. One can even install a candle in a water container, earthen container like this, and if you add a 0B or a water filter to it, one can get pure water by simple means of purification at home, which will impact the health of the children and save a lot of money. Now, for all this, we need that the framework is very important for decision making. Okay, we say here are the options, here is what we can do, but is there a framework, and are any proper decisions being taken? So, we have lot of institutions are there for that, like the Delhi Urban Shelter Improvement Board Act of 2010 is a legislation which has been enacted by the legislature of the NCT of Delhi and notified with effect from the 1st of July 2010 to provide for implementation of schemes for improvement in slums and JJ clusters, with a view to bring about improvement in environment and living conditions, and to prepare housing scheme for such persons. So, of course, laws are necessary, enactments are there, acts are required, but at the same time they have to be put into practice as well. Another very important enactment has been, as we all know, of the 74th Constitution Amendment Act 1992, which made 33% reservation for women mandatory in urban local bodies and panchayats. And now in Bihar and all, they have even gone up to the extent of 50%. So, this shows how the role of women can be so important and can bring about a drastic change in the present scenario. Of course, political will is necessary, we all know that, but promises made by political parties in election manifestos is not sufficient. At election time, everybody now, they have become aware, because when the politicians go to the slums, the first thing is they are told we want water and sanitation, we want toilets, then we vote for you. So, okay, they all put it up in the manifestos, we will construct so many toilets, we will do this, we will do this, but they have to be implemented also. They should not be forgotten after the elections, because afterwards the usual excuse is dearth of funds. We don't have the funds. The municipality doesn't have the fund. They don't have the funds. Where should we get the money? So, we have tried to construct some toilets in slums here, but then again the problem is where's the money? So, if they don't have the money, then who does? At the same time, on the other hand, the politician says, oh, there's no dearth of money, there's plenty of money. Just get us somebody to do it. We don't have the people who will actually do it and implement it. But it has to be a little more realistic than that. So, management options for sanitation in urban slums, we should not depend only on politicians and the municipalities. There are other institutional management is also there, an imperative for construction, delivery and maintenance of urban sanitation services, especially when we are envisaging green cities for the future. We are all talking of smart green cities. which is the latest this thing at the moment, and of course, a lot of work is going into it. But the stress is again more on infrastructure, on roads, on highways, on airports, on smart cities. But the basic fundamentals of having toilets is important over there. So, institutional management can also play an important role over there. And while we are discussing smart cities, I would also like to mention that now a new technology has come up for e-toilets. I don't know whether you've heard of it or not, where it has auto cleaning. It's all connected by GPRS. So, as many e-toilets in the city are all connected to GPRS, which are connected to a central room where they can monitor how much water there is in the tank on top of the toilet. Each toilet has a tank on top, water tank, whether it is working, the auto flushing is working or not, and whether it is being decomposed on site, whether that is working or not, and what are the number of people using that toilet and what is the collection, because you have to put a coin in it for the door to open and then go inside. So, it is just very neat, small structures, steel, of course, they are very expensive, but they are the high end, the absolute high end, costing about 6 to 8 lakhs of rupees per toilet. But the technology has come in, the toilets are connected to the GPRS, and I am sure that will be very popular in the recent times, especially on highways when there are no toilets for stretches, for long stretches. In fact, abhi some lady was telling me that I go to Gurgaon every day for work, and there is absolutely no toilet between Delhi and Gurgaon where I can stop on the way while going or coming or when I am commuting. But why? We are in Delhi, in the capital of the country, why isn't there something there? So, these are things which have to be looked at. So, maybe management institutions, other institutions besides the government and the municipalities can come forward to bring this up. That is why we say public-private partnership is the need of the hour for identifying innovative solutions and bringing them in practice for healthier livable cities. We have to have a PPP model to make it successful, not only in slums, but even outside slums, in whatever way possible to make life easier for us and more livable. I think I have taken a lot of your time. So, in conclusion, I will say sanitation does bring safety, dignity, equality and happiness amongst women and girls. I think there is no denying that fact. As a woman is the nucleus of the family, when educated on all aspects of environmental sanitation and hygiene, she ensures better health for the family and for the society at large. But that awareness has to be brought in. We all need to join hands and do our bit if we wish to live in clean and healthy surroundings and be called a civilized society. Thank you very much.